Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp. Kurt Russell was born on March 17, 1951 in Springfield, Massachusetts. At 42, he played Wyatt Earp, a legendary Western policeman, a tough, morally conflicted figure. The role mirrored elements of Russell's own life, a long career marked by both public success and personal challenges. Growing up the son of actor Bing Russell, Kurt was surrounded by fame from an early age. The expectations placed on him to follow in his father's footsteps made his childhood both bright and stifling. Breaking away from the Disney child star image, known for films like The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, was no easy task. Even after making his mark in action films like Escape from New York and The Thing in the 1980s, he often felt boxed in, yearning for more complex roles. His personal life was also turbulent. His first marriage to Hubley ended in 1983 amid work pressures and a strained trust. The separation left Russell grappling with the pain of a broken family and the challenge of raising his son, Boston, while juggling the demands of acting. The death of his father in 2003, a man who had been his greatest inspiration, forced Russell into a period of quiet reflection on his priorities, his legacy, and his place in both family and film. Despite the pain, Russell found lasting love with Goldie Hawn. Together they built a blended family of 4 children and a warm home, even as he dealt with the pressures of public fatherhood. In recent years, with roles in The Hateful Eight and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Russell has chosen roles that honor his journey and the cinematic legacy he cherishes. Today, at 74, Kurt Russell remains a revered Hollywood icon. His net worth is estimated at $100 million, a testament to a career that spans more than 6 decades and includes unforgettable hits from Escape from New York to The Christmas Chronicles. Above all, he is remembered as a resilient actor who knows how to balance passion and responsibility, and constantly reinvents himself with each role. Don Collier as the High Roller, still alive and well? Don Collier was born on October 17, 1928, in Santa Monica, California. At age 65, he appeared in Tombstone as the High Roller, a cold-blooded, experienced gambler who watches the bloody chaos of the West from the sidelines. Though his role was brief, Collier's performance left a lasting impression, a man tempered by experience, silently witnessing the brutality of his time, just as his own tumultuous life off-screen. Collier grew up during the harsh years of the Great Depression, when poverty engulfed his family and community. As a young man, he worked tirelessly at various jobs, including lumberjack, sailor, surveyor, struggling to make ends meet. After serving in the Navy, he decided to pursue an acting career, but his early years were challenging. His long battle with alcoholism and deep fear of failure led to him missing out on many opportunities. Despite notable roles in films such as El Dorado, 1966, and The War Wagon, 1967, his personal life was also troubled. His first marriage to Sharon Knight ended in divorce, leaving him to struggle with a deep loneliness that never went away, even after his remarriage to Mary Lou. Though he later found solace in his life through hosting shows like The Desert Speaks and performing solo, sadness lingered, especially as friends and colleagues from his heyday passed away, leaving him feeling lost in memories of a bygone era. Don Collier died of lung cancer on September 13, 2021, in Harrodsburg, Kentucky, at the age of 92. He left behind a net worth of about $3 million, a modest sum for someone who had spent nearly 7 decades in the film industry, but a reminder of a steadfast performer who quietly devoted himself, never seeking the spotlight, to his role as Marshal Fred White. Powers Booth as Curly Bill Brocious. Powers Booth was born on June 1, 1948 in the impoverished town of Snyder, Texas. At 45, he portrayed the fierce and charismatic Curly Bill Brocious, a ruthless outlaw who wreaked havoc across the Wild West. Booth's performance was more than a role. It reflected a man who appeared strong and resilient on the outside, but secretly struggled with inner demons and deep loneliness. Booth's early years were filled with loss. His father's death left a void that nothing could fill. His grief fueled his determination to rise above his circumstances. He excelled in school, sports, and eventually found his calling in the arts. His breakthrough came in 1980 with Guyana Tragedy, The Story of Jim Jones, which earned him an Emmy, but fame also brought new challenges. Booth was cast in dark, villainous roles. The characters he identified with gradually consumed his spirit and dragged him into silent depression. On the surface, Booth's personal life seemed stable. He spent nearly 50 years with Pam Cole, his college sweetheart, and together they raised 2 children, Paris and Preston. Behind the glamour, however, Booth spent long periods of time away from his family, as the demands of his career created invisible distances. On screen, he appeared authoritative and cold. Off-screen, he faced long nights of loneliness and self-doubt. In his final years, Booth quietly battled pancreatic cancer. Despite his failing health, he poured his heart into his final roles on Nashville and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. On May 14, 2017, Powers Booth died at the age of 68 in Los Angeles. His net worth was estimated at $8 million, a modest sum for a lifetime of work. Harry George Carey Jr. was born on May 16, 1921, in the farming community of Saugus, California. At age 72, he took on the role of Marshal Fred White in Tombstone, a kindly old sheriff who clings to the ideals of justice amid the violent and chaotic West. Despite his brief screen time, Carey Jr. delivered a memorable performance, portraying a man of integrity who fights for law and order, but ultimately falls victim to senseless violence. As a child, Carey Jr. lived in the shadow of his parents, silent film legend Harry Carey and actress Olive Carey. Growing up on film sets, he became part of John Ford's film family, appearing in classics such as Three Godfathers 1948 and The Searchers 1956. Yet throughout his life, he struggled to be seen as more than just Harry Carey's son, a label that often acted as a shackle in his quest to establish his own identity. His personal life was also fraught with heartache. His marriage to Marilyn Fix seemed to have survived the storms of the decades. But in 1989, tragedy struck when their eldest son, Stephen, died suddenly. The loss changed Carey Jr., pulling him inward and away from the stage and screen that had once been his lifeblood. Even in later roles, like 1985's Mask and 1990's Back to the Future Part 3, his eyes reflected an unmistakable sadness. In his final years, Carey Jr. found himself surrounded by memories. His old Western friends, John Wayne, Ben Johnson, John Ford, were all gone. Hollywood had changed, becoming a place where he no longer felt at home. On December 27, 2012, Carey Jr. passed away quietly at a hospital in Santa Barbara at the age of 91. His ashes were interred at Westwood Village Memorial Park with a net worth of approximately $5 million. His greatest legacy remains his unwavering dedication to cinema and the ideals he so often portrayed on screen. Sanford Gibbons as Father Feeney. Sanford Gibbons was born on September 5, 1933 in Kansas City, Missouri. At age 60, he plays Father Feeney, the compassionate priest who brings rare glimmers of hope and compassion to the violent and lawless West. For Gibbons, the role is more than a job. It is a source of comfort, a reflection of his own struggles and quiet resilience. From a young age, Gibbons felt trapped by the strict expectations of his religious family. Their devotion shaped him in many ways, but it also left him yearning for freedom, for a way to express himself beyond the rigid boundaries set for him. Acting was his escape, his chance to breathe. Early in his career, small roles in Alfred Hitchcock Presents and other 1960s television shows signaled a bright future. But Hollywood, he discovered, was anything but kind. The constant uncertainty about pay, the fierce competition, and the constant struggle for meaningful roles gradually wore him down. In times of weakness, he turned to alcohol for solace, but instead of comfort, it only added to his burden, casting a shadow over his life for many years. Gibbons soon found love and married actress Grace Williams. For a time, it seemed like they could build something solid and stable in an uncertain world, but the stress of long separations, small roles, and personal pain drove them apart. The divorce broke his heart, and although he loved his 2 children dearly, the distance between them grew over time, leaving him with lingering regrets for the rest of his life. He later remarried, hoping for a fresh start, But the emotional scars from his earlier struggles remained, and the loneliness never completely disappeared. No matter how many spiritual roles he played or how many comforting words he spoke on screen. In his later years, as the glow of his fame faded, Sanford Gibbons chose a quieter path. He settled in Arizona, where he wrote, shared his knowledge through acting classes, and spent his days reflecting on the dreams he pursued, the triumphs he achieved, and the dreams he missed. On December 29, 2018, at the age of 85, Gibbons died of a heart attack at his home in Phoenix. His fortune, estimated at $1 million, was modest by Hollywood standards. Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. Val Kilmer was born on December 31, 1959 in Los Angeles. At 33, he captivated audiences with his portrayal of Doc Holliday, a legendary gunslinger struggling with death and loss. The role was more than just a performance. It mirrored Kilmer's own tumultuous journey through fame, heartbreak, and resilience. Grief has been with Kilmer since childhood. As a child, he lost his younger brother Wesley in a drowning accident, a tragedy that left deep scars. That grief shaped Kilmer's sensitivity and depth, but also made him reserved and quietly lonely. He quickly rose to fame in Hollywood with impressive roles such as Iceman in Top Gun, 1986, and Jim Morrison in The Doors, 1991. However, behind the spotlight, Kilmer continued to struggle to assert himself and escape the shadow of his previous roles. His marriage to actress Joanne Whalley, once a beacon of light during a turbulent time, ended in 1996. Rumors of on-set tension, professional conflicts, and doubts about their fidelity to each other caused a rift in their relationship, and the split left Kilmer struggling with depression and growing distant from his children and from himself. His career was further challenged by conflicts with directors and co-stars on films such as The Island of Dr. Moreau and Batman Forever, which earned him a reputation as unapproachable, despite his undeniable talent. Kilmer's biggest battle came in 2015, when he was diagnosed with throat cancer. The disease robbed him of his signature deep voice, leading to painful surgeries, chemotherapy, and a life with a tracheostomy tube. Although he made a stirring comeback as Iceman in Top Gun, Maverick, 2022, his final years were marked by a quiet and courageous battle against illness and loneliness. On April 1, 2025, Val Kilmer passed away at the age of 65, ending a life of both glory and pain. He left behind an estimated net worth of $25 million, much of it from iconic roles that continue to inspire. Kilmer's legacy remains a testament to his passion for art and the high price of pursuing it with unwavering dedication. Grant James as Dr. Goodfellow. Grant James was born on June 19, 1935 in Medina, Ohio. At 58, he played Dr. Goodfellow in Tombstone 93, a devoted doctor in the harsh West, helpless as blood flows around him. The role, though small, was a true reflection of Grant James in real life, a quiet, persistent man who often stayed on the fringes of the spotlight he yearned to reach. James's childhood was marked by the pain of a broken family and the separation of his parents, which left deep emotional scars. That childhood trauma fueled a lifelong desire for recognition and love, despite contributing to major projects like Walker, Texas Ranger, and being recognized as a leading voice actor in the Dallas anime community. James remained quietly behind the scenes, a respected talent but never a household name. The constant struggle to find steady work, periods of unemployment, and the pressure to provide weighed heavily on him, often leaving him with low self-esteem. His personal life was no less turbulent. His first marriage to Barbara Grant ended after 6 years, and he carried a sense of guilt over his often estranged relationship with his children, especially his daughter Susan, who followed him into acting but died suddenly in 2009, leaving a void that has never been filled. Although he later found companionship in Julie Erickson, with whom he mentored countless young artists, loneliness continued to haunt him, especially as friends and colleagues drifted away. Towards the end of his life, James's health declined. He lived quietly in Spokane, Washington, occasionally working on new projects, but spending most of his time reflecting on the past. Grant James passed away on November 23, 2022, at the age of 87. His net worth is estimated at around $2 million, A modest figure given his more than half a century of dedication, but his true legacy lives on in the passion he shared with his successors. Pedro Armendariz Jr., as Father Pedro Armendariz Jr., was born on April 6, 1940, in Mexico City. At the age of 53, he appeared in Tombstone as Father Compassion, a gentle, compassionate character who brought a touch of grace to the harsh frontier. The role was deeply personal for Armendariz Jr., reflecting the pain and silent struggles that marked much of his life. From a young age, Armendariz carried the burden of living in the shadow of his legendary father, Pedro Armendariz Sr., and mother, Carmelita Bor Armendariz. Despite appearing in major international films such as Earthquake 1974 and License to Kill 1989, Armendariz Jr. was often relegated to supporting roles, his talents never fully recognized. Over time, that quiet frustration grew, leading him to struggle throughout his life to find a place where he could truly shine, a star that always seemed out of reach. His personal life was also filled with longing. 2 marriages, first to Carmen Patricia Arrieta and then to Carmen Salinas, had brought hope of a peaceful life, but the demands of his job, coupled with the long distances from home, created an irreparable distance. By the time he appeared in Amistad, 1997, and The Mask of Zorro, 1998, those distances had become abysses, and he often found himself alone in strange cities, weighed down by the guilt of a father and husband who felt he had failed. The greatest tragedy came in his later years. Diagnosed with eye cancer, Armendariz Jr. faced not only health risks but also the loss of his sight, the gift that had bound him to his craft and his passion. Although he continued to fight, starring in films such as Once Upon a Time in Mexico, 2003, and The Legend of Zorro, 2005, his health gradually declined. The disease not only consumed his body but also haunted him with dreams of roles he would never get. On December 26, 2011, Pedro Armendariz Jr. died in New York at the age of 71. He left behind a net worth of about $4 million, a modest sum for a lifetime of dedication. He was buried next to his father in Mexico City, closing a chapter in the life of quiet struggle and tireless dedication to the arts. Robert Mitchum as narrator. Robert Charles Derman. Mitchum was born on August 6, 1917 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. At 76, Mitchum provided the voice of the narrator in Tombstone, with lines that were epic, almost mythical, a voice that reflected the tragedies he himself had experienced. Mitchum's life was filled with loss and hardship. His father died when Mitchum was 2 years old, leaving the boy to grow up in poverty, wandering from city to city. At age 16, he found himself in a reform school for a minor offense. At night, he lay awake listening to the sound of freight trains, recalling the days when he clung to the rail cars to find work. These harsh experiences shaped the rough, jaded character he brought to the screen. In Out of the Past, 1947, Mitchum was more than just a character. He lived in the shadows of his life. His marriage to Dorothy Spence, his teenage love, initially seemed to promise stability. But the lure of Hollywood and the lure of beautiful co-stars led Mitchum into a series of affairs with actresses such as Ava Gardner and Gene Simmons. All the while, Dorothy endured silently, staying by his side for nearly 60 years. Family tensions and personal failures pushed Mitchum deeper into drinking and smoking, habits that eventually took their toll. In his final years, Mitchum's body bore the brunt of his constant struggle. Lung cancer and emphysema gradually sapped the strength of the once tall man. The once powerful physique that had captivated audiences was now a shadow of its former self. His children, now grown and scattered, left him to face his loneliness and the ghosts of his memories. On July 1, 1997, Mitchum died in his sleep, with only Dorothy, the woman who had witnessed all his triumphs and heartbreaks, by his side. His estate is estimated at $10 million. But Mitchum's true legacy lies not in his wealth, but in his heroic, haunting performances that continue to live on in cinema and in the eyes of all who have seen his sad gaze on screen. Charlton Heston as Henry Hooker. Charlton Heston was born on October 4, 1923 in Illinois. At age 70, he appeared in Tombstone as Henry Hooker, a seasoned and principled rancher who quietly assisted Sheriff Wyatt Earp and his men in their fight for justice in the lawless West. Although Heston had few lines, his presence brought a moral weight and a respectful strength that audiences would never forget. However, behind that majestic image was a life filled with pain. Heston's childhood, marred by the Great Depression, his parents' divorce, and abject poverty, left a lasting scar on his psyche. As a child, he struggled with his mother and stepfather in the backwoods of Michigan, where hunger and isolation went hand in hand. That wound never fully healed, even as Heston became a star with his iconic roles in The Ten Commandments and Ben-Hur. Ironically, as his fame grew, he became more and more distant from those closest to him. Despite being married to Lydia Clark for 64 years and father to Fraser and Holly, Heston often seemed distant from his family. Wallowing in the loneliness of being a real-life hero, he turned to alcohol to relieve the pressures and voids that fame could not fill. Towards the end of his life, Heston faced his own darkness. Nearing 80, in 2000, he entered rehab. Not long after, Alzheimer's disease crept in, robbing him of the memories that had defined him. On April 5, 2008, Charlton Heston died in his sleep at his Beverly Hills home at the age of 84. By his bedside was Lydia, who had seen both the light and the dark of his life. His net worth was estimated at $40 million, but his image, a hero on screen and a lonely soul in life. Michael Biehn as Johnny Ringo. Michael Biehn, born July 31, 1956 in Anniston, Alabama, is an actor who made a strong impression with his role as Johnny Ringo, a cold, philosophical assassin, in the film Tombstone '93, when he was 37 years old. This role, with its tense confrontations with Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday, helped Biehn solidify his image as a smart, dangerous villain who is also deeply lonely. Behind the scenes, Biehn's life was no less turbulent. He grew up in a broken home following his parents' divorce and developed a complex inner world from a young age, yearning for recognition but often avoiding the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Although he rose to fame with iconic roles in The Terminator, 1984, and Aliens, 1986, his career quickly declined due to unfortunate career choices and an outspoken personality that did not endear him to the film industry. At the same time, alcoholism wreaked havoc on Biehn's personal life, contributing to the bitter end of his first two marriages and leaving a deep rift with his children from those relationships. Biehn suffered his greatest tragedy around 2008, when he suffered a stroke and underwent dangerous open-heart surgery. The incident devastated him both physically and mentally, but it also marked a turning point in his recovery. Since then, along with his third wife Jennifer Blank and son Dashiell, Biehn has led a quieter life, focusing on independent film projects and inspiring young actors with his own life story. As of 2025, Michael Biehn is 69 years old. He is still alive, continuing to take small roles in art house films and occasionally teaching acting. His net worth is estimated at $8 million, largely from his SAG pension and genuine creative endeavors, befitting an artist who has bravely faced both the spotlight and the shadows of life. Bill Paxton as Morgan Earp. Bill Paxton was born on May 17, 1955 in Fort Worth, Texas. At 38 years old, Paxton plays Morgan Earp, the youngest of the Earp family, an upright and optimistic gunfighter forced to face inevitable tragedy amid the bloodshed of the West. Like his character, Paxton is a man of energy who often battles adversity silently. Paxton's childhood was marked by instability. His family moved frequently due to financial difficulties, leaving young Bill with a persistent sense of insecurity. That loneliness and upheaval fueled a fierce desire to prove himself, but his path to success was far from easy. Before he found acclaim for films like Apollo 13 and Twister, Paxton was constantly rejected, struggling with supporting roles. From an anonymous thug in The Terminator to a panicked soldier in Aliens, as he fought for his place in Hollywood. At home, life wasn't always as peaceful as it seemed. Despite finding love with his childhood sweetheart Louise Newberry and raising two children, James and Lydia, Paxton struggled with the pressures of balancing family and the demands of his career. The long years away from home, the pressure of living in the public eye, and the anxiety of being boxed in weighed heavily on him. He often confessed to a fear of stagnation, worrying that each victory might be his last. Tragedy struck late in his life. Heart problems caused by childhood rheumatic fever forced Paxton to undergo surgery in 2017. Complications from the first surgery led to a second surgery, and just 10 days later, on February 25, 2017, Paxton died suddenly of a stroke at the age of 61. His ashes were interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. He left behind an estate worth an estimated $25 million, a fitting sum for a distinguished but always modest career.